start the September 4th, 2025 regular Board of Trustees meeting of the Mountain View Westman School District at 6:01 p.m. All stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I have a roll call, please?
Devin Conley.
Lisa Henry.
Charles DeFazio.
Bill Lambert. For those trustees are present, and Trustee Reed is not able to attend this evening. She has a back-to-school night. Do I have any questions about the agenda? Any members of the public wish to or speak on the agenda? Don't see anyone in person or anyone online. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
A motion by Trustee Conley and a second by Trustee Henry to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Next, we'll move on to special recognition.
I'll assume that was for me. Good evening. So happy to see all of you here on this joyous occasion. It is a special day when we get to recognize our newly tenured permanent teachers after completing 2 years plus of teaching in Mountain View Westman School District. So with that, I'm going to hand over to our Director of Human Resources, Erin Green, for the recognition.
Not on.
Good evening, President Lambert and trustees. I'm Erin Green, as Jeff mentioned. I'm the new director of, I was going to say my old title, Director of HR in the Mountain View Westman School District. I'm super excited to be here. This is always one of my favorite nights. I love celebrating the hard work of our teachers and all of the work that they do for our students. It's an honor to be here to celebrate our newly tenured teachers. And as you guys know, earning tenure is no small feat. Not only is it just hitting a benchmark and meeting expectations during observations, but it's being part of the amazing community here, doing fantastic things for our kids, going above and beyond caring about them. That when you get this honor and award, it's not the end of your journey. It's really the beginning of your lifelong learning. And we can't wait to partner with you and see all of the amazing things you do for kids. Teaching's a lifestyle, right? We all know that. And we're so honored that you're on our team. So I'm going to introduce everyone and give you your awards. Mr. Lambert, do you want to help? Or President Lambert? Okay, so when we call your name, we're going to have you go over around and stand in front of that line, and then we're going to get a group picture at the end, okay? So we'll start with Alice Bowie from Castro. Alice teaches TK at Castro. We're really proud she's here. Congratulations. The next one is from Stevenson, and she's actually not here tonight, Lexi Brand, but we want to recognize her hard work as well. From Landals, we have Counselor Carolyn Chang. I got your congratulations. From Crittenden, we have Jamie Cifuentes Gill. I got to see her in action with the 6th grade science kiddos the other day. It was pretty amazing. Kara Clapper from our district office. She's a SPED TOSA. And I'm not sure she was able to make it. From Mauna Loma, we have 1st grade teacher Alicia Dunn. Okay, moving on from Amaya. I know she's here. She's one of our SAI SPED teachers, Tammy Evans. Actually, Bob, excuse. I know it's Bob. I think you moved from Amaya last year, correct? Bob. So how could we forget she's part of Bob? We saw the crowd. Sorry about that. We have Maddie Gallagher from Theracoft, second grade. Also from Amaya kindergarten teacher Brenna Harklaw, and I remember. Congratulations. A reading intervention teacher from the district, and I think I saw her at Vargas today working hard with students. Lizette Hernandez. Part of the Landals group, first grade teacher Ruth Kim. From Graham, also teaching science, Allison Lee. I saw it. Okay, we'll make sure we get our award to her. From Theracoff in third grade, we have two teachers from Theracoff third grade tonight. Abby Meyer. And then the other one is Jen Lee. Come on down. Jen Yee, sorry. I'm learning still. Jen Yee, come on down. From Stevenson, I don't think Sakita's here. No, but we'll be thinking of her and we will get her award. From Crittenden, Rachel Navarez. She teaches our newcomers. From Landals, Nicole Perazzo, I saw her, third grade. From Amai, one of our STEAM teachers, Michael Rollins. Love it. We got some cheerleaders here. From Graham, part of our Spanish teacher, I know he's here, Moises Ruiz Rico. So wonderful. Moving right along, we're still at Graham. I did see Pedro. There you are, Pedro. Pedro Serrano, one of our counselors. From Miss Strahl, our STEAM teacher, Judith is here. Judith Sosa, congratulations. And then also from Miss Strahl, our TK teacher, Evie Sullivan. And then Andrew Varga's not here. He's from Amai. He's a TK teacher, but I believe it's his birthday. So I think he's not here. But we will make sure we get him his present. From Bev, we have Lauren Windsor teaching kindergarten. By the way, it's so awesome that you guys all came out, all of you, to support your family and friends. That's like one of the most amazing things here. So it's really great to see you all. From Vargas, we have Trevor Yerkes. Fifth grade. Congratulations. And I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. Our very last name tonight. Come on over. Don't be shy. Rochelle Zelenka. First grade at Landals. You know what? Congratulations, everyone. This is an impressive group, and you guys are our future, and you're our future Mountain Dew Wisman team and family. So we're really honored to have you with our students. You're the best of the best. So thank you. We're going to try to take a photo. So maybe we can get two rows. Do you want 2 rows? Okay, so yeah, we can get. Would the trustees like to be in the picture? Thank you so much, everyone. If anybody wants some treats outside, help yourself. And thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, she was there. She said her niece was there. Yeah. Yeah, there she is, over the side. Yes. Yep. It is neat. One can only hope. Okay, that was great. We're sort of cleared out the audience here. Okay, we'll move on to item number 3. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the board concerning items on the closed session agenda. Would any member of the public like to speak on the closed session agenda items? Do not see anyone in person, and I do not see anyone online. So with that, we'll close the open session and move to closed session. We will reconvene open session at 7:05 PM. There was no reportable action taken during closed session. Move on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions concerning the consent agenda from the trustees? Seeing none, are there any members of the public who would like to speak on the consent agenda? Do not see anyone in public or online. Any comments, or do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion to approve the consent agenda by trustee Conley and a second by trustee Henry to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. We will move on to communications. First, we have employee organizations. Does anyone from an employee organization wish to speak? I do not see any. Therefore, I will move on to district committees. Any member of a district committee wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll move to superintendent comments.
So I requested I give my comments at the end in light of the fact that we have one of our candidates here. That's all right?
That's fine. Move on to community comments. This is the time reserved for community members to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board and administration welcome this opportunity to listen. However, in compliance with the Brown Act, the board is not permitted to take action on non-agenda items. See one person in public who wishes to speak. Is there anyone online who wishes to speak? I do not see anyone online, so we'll close the community comments, and we'll start off with former trustee Nelson, who is going to make some positive comments about our school district.
Yes,
Flip up.
oh, good. Sometimes we have great microphones. Yeah, one of the things I can make as a good comment about our district is the Asian and white kids matriculating out of the 8th grade do really well in this district. I wish I had the comparisons to the Los Altos district, but they compete very well. If you know how Ellen Wheeler's boy did post this school district and going into Berkeley, he did well. And my eldest son going into Stanford did very well. And my other 2 sons did well in the colleges they went to. But one of the things we found is if you look at this plot, this way of distributing data based on what the percentage of white, what the percentage of Asian, which is slightly less than the 24% of white, or the 16% of Asian, what you can see is there's a very big academic gap. This is a performance in math for the matriculating 8th graders in 22 or 23, 24. One of the things I was realizing I've been trying to do is use graphics to tell the story of the data. And one of the things here is I'm just trying this out rather than having a big blank here, because this isn't a blank, this gap. This gap represents about 100 students in the graduating class that year that were Hispanic and didn't meet grade level, right? Down at the bottom is percent, which represents number of students. And the sideways represents proportion of those students. But if you take those and multiply the two, you get this area. And this area, this white gap, represents real students. I put little stars on here. I didn't get the whole, 80 80 or 85 stars that it would be. Of course, there's a number up here, 16%, that represents students both on the white and the Asian side that aren't making grade level either for various reasons. They may have IEPs, they may have disabilities that prevent them from getting to grade level standard. But it's just a shame that these almost 100 kids this year that are smart, that unfortunately they go through our district and they start off with not nearly as big a gap in math in first grade, but the time they're in eighth grade, this gap has gotten huge. It's one of the reasons we're flying under the cloud when you look at Maryland's cloud of comparable districts across the country. Thank you.
Thank you, former trustee Nelson. Okay, we'll move on to action and discussion. First, first item is discussion, Mountain View Wistman Residences Corporation Board interviews. Superintendent Bear will introduce this.
Yes, we have two additional candidates here to interview today, and we're pleased to bring forward. And as a reminder, we interviewed 3 candidates last meeting. We have 2 this evening, and then next meeting on September 18th, we will the board will deliberate and hopefully appoint to the nonprofit board. So, but tonight we'd like to welcome Jehal Shah. Welcome.
Hello, good evening. I'm Tejal Shah, and I've been my kids have gone. I don't currently reside in Mountain View, but now I moved into the Cupertino area. But my kids did go to Mountain View School District, which is Bob Elementary School, when it was the time when Dr. Kritz was the principal over here. It's been a long, long time. Today, my kids are already working. One is a CPA and one is Thank you so much. When I came to know about this thing, I myself was a teacher before in Mountain View, where I volunteered so many hours for the Bub School, where I used to take the kids who needed help, where they were lacking behind in the classroom. So what I used to do was take those kids, coach them or teach them in which area, like English or math or whichever area they were lagging behind, coach them and brought them up to that level where they were in the class, then again back to the class, put them back in the class so they are with the class and don't feel that they are left out. So I did volunteer a lot in that. And then I was a teacher myself and taught pre-K for the kids when my kids were in Bob School too. So many things I did in Mountain View. So it was a pleasure to know this, that I could be able to go back and give back to the community and be with part of the Teachers Thing Association and help the teachers in some way. So that is where I look forward myself to be in this.
Well, thank you very much for introducing yourself. Okay,
Thank
that was what we were going to ask you to do.
Oh,
to
I'm
start off.
sorry, I went way ahead of it.
But that's completely fine. So, you know, gets you to feel comfortable anyway, right? So we have 3 questions. We've asked all the candidates, and so we'll ask them in serial fashion here. You know, take your time. We have plenty of time, and then at the end, we'll ask you to just, you know, let us know of anything else about yourself, or, you know, what help us decide, you know, evaluate your candidacy.
Thank you.
So I will start off. Why are you interested in serving on the board of the nonprofit?
Like I said, I've been in Mountain View area and I've worked in this area a lot. Being a teacher, I know how the teachers play a big role in the community. Plus, giving them this opportunity to have this housing center, that's a great advantage for the teachers. One thing that is. And being in finance side, this will also help me to give them an opportunity to how to their financial goals or financial needs, to give them a part of it, which they need any assistance or any advice on that, I can bring that knowledge to them and share with them too, because that will be great for the teachers to help them in their life. Because sometimes they are working and they are not aware how to do their finance or how to build their budgeting and all that stuff. So that is where I thought this would be a great pleasure to be helpful on this board and give my finance in all the needs and the goals and meeting themselves.
Okay, thank you. Trustee DeFazio?
Do you have any special area of expertise or experience that you think would be helpful to the MVW Residences corporate board?
Yes, in the budgeting part as well as in the finance part, because we're working in the banks, that is as a manager in the bank, that is my goal, where I take the people, I talk to them about how to budget themselves or how to put their finance or how to bring their needs or meet their goals. Because some people tend to spend more or some people don't know where to put it or how to earn their interest. So as a part of that, yes, I am really good in that. And I've been 5 years working with Fremont Bank, and I've been awarded 2 President's Award already for doing the services and even to the community, not only Mountain View and all these areas. I just go ahead and talk about it, and it was really appreciated by people around. That's where I thought I could bring this more to the board and be helpful to all around in that too.
Thank you.
And for our last question, please describe how well you've worked with others on other committees or boards.
I've not worked on any boards, I'll be sure on that, but I have worked with, like I said, being a branch manager, I have to move around and get businesses. So going over to the businesses, talking to their boards, yes, I've done a lot of that stuff because my job is to get businesses to the where I work to get the businesses and help them out how to meet their goals and loans and all that stuff. So yes, and meeting all the not only from the business side, but also on the personal side, I have been able to do a lot of good things. If you see on LinkedIn, also my name is there because I was a great manager for the last 5 years. People were very, very proud of the way I have been able to do my achievements so far. Before previous this bank, I used to work in Bank of West, which is now BMO. There also I was given a President's Award for being on top of this all things. That's where I stand.
Those are the 3 short questions we have. So, there's anything else you'd like to say?
Just I wanted to say, yes, this is an honor for me to be at least today to be present before you all and let know my own self, because for me, school districts plays a very important role to the kids, because if the teachers are happy, they are going to show that to the kids and the kids are going to develop a lot. And my kids developed in Mountain View in pub school. And I know how much importance it was that teachers played a lot bigger role in their life. And today what they are, I thank the Mountain View School District for that, because it is a fantastic job they do there with bringing up these kids, giving them the right path, guiding them towards their life and everything. So this is one way I want to give back again to the schools and give back to the community, something which I can help. And being in finance, yes, that will be a big advantage for me to bring in something forward in any assistance that they might require over there.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I know I always see you at the MVEF Gala, so thank you very much for
Thank you.
contributing to that as
No,
well.
but thank you for considering me. I really appreciate this.
you.
It's a great opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the next candidate is not here yet. I would suggest we just move on with the agenda and we can come back to it. Is that fine with everyone?
Just an observation, the next items, I think we'll take there'll be longer agenda items, so they're definitely gonna run past 7:30 when the candidate comes here.
Oh, would you like to give your superintendent
I was gonna
update?
say that. I would love to. Um, just a couple of items. This year, a number of our schools we were notified that Williams visits were going to take place. This is where um, people from the county office come to verify that we have the necessary instructional materials, as well as that our school facilities are in good shape. So we're almost done. 8 of our schools have been visited now, with Vargas being on September 11. It's an annual mandated audit for some schools to determine if they're, as I said, providing sufficient resources for students, safe facilities, instructional materials, and teachers, of course. We passed all 8 of 9 of our visits and were praised for the organization that we displayed and having all those materials ready for them. So big thanks to the staff members who made this a smooth process. It was handled very well at our school sites by our principals. And I'll point out that organization was in place because of Kathy's leadership, just making sure that we were very prepared and that our school site staffs felt confident for the arrival. It is a bit of a nerve-wracking process. I just know from in retirement, I helped out being an auditor that came to visit. So I know it does stir some anxiety upon the arrival, but even 2 of our school sites who had surprise visits, right? They don't tell you exactly when they're going to come. We're quite ready for those. So big thanks to everybody involved, and especially again, Kathy, for her leadership. And then just again, congratulations to our teachers who were here tonight. It was great seeing so many people out. It's really an important milestone. I know it recognizes their professional dedication, expertise, and really the impact they're having in the classroom. So glad they were here. Glad there was so much support out there for them as well. And even though they're not here any longer, congratulations. And that's it for tonight.
Thank you. Suggest we will take a 5-minute break until the next candidate arrives. Okay, we are returning to open session at 7:32. The next candidate we were going to interview has not arrived yet, so we will move on to item 9B, site plan process and timeline for 2025-26.
So good evening, trustees. I am Here we go. Okay, so happy to be here. Okay, getting messages on my, sorry. Okay. Happy to be here tonight to talk a little bit about our process for developing our school plans for student achievement. Our school plans are aligned with our goal areas in our current strategic plan, as well as our LCAP. And so why do we have school plans? The school plan, or the school plan for student achievement, we affectionately call the SIPSA, is a blueprint to improve outcomes for all students. They're developed by site administrators with input from school site council, the English Learner Advisory Committee, and staff at each school site. Each site plan has a comprehensive needs assessment based on student data analysis, includes student data, and has identified metrics for evaluating and monitoring progress towards goals. The SIPSAs are initially approved by all our school site councils, and then they're brought to you, the governing board, for final approval. So our process, here's just a little kind of flow chart. So our sites start with looking at their needs and looking at their previous year site plan, the actions that they took, the goals, did they meet them, did they not? Where are they based on current assessment data? They gather input, they talk with the school site councils, they talk with their parents on their ELACs, and then they work with their teachers. They develop goals, identify strategies and actions that can help them reach their goals, and then identify expenditures as well for any items that may cost money in their plan. They consult with district staff, both Dr. Nguyen, Director Chang, and I work and look at all of the plans. They're shared with you for review and approval, and then they implement their plans and monitor the progress over the course of the year. So a plan is required to have stakeholder involvement. So the school site council and ELAC and the staff are the main groups that work on the school plans. We follow the Green Act requirements for posting all of our meetings, including agendas being posted. And the SIPSA, or the site plan, is clearly listed as an agenda item. Taking minutes, posting the minutes, and then approving the site plan. ELAC signs off on the site plan that they have provided input. School site council signs that they have approved it in a meeting. This year, one thing that we have asked our sites to do is to make sure when they are presenting any information related to the site plan at any of their meetings of the public, that everything's translated into Spanish. The site plan also includes goals to improve student outcomes. It has evidence-based strategies, proposed expenditures, and then assigned recommendations and assurances page. Our goal areas include language arts, mathematics. We have a goal around English language learners, social emotional health and wellness, and inclusive and welcoming culture. And like I mentioned earlier, the strategic plan and LCAP guide our site plan goals, and we use academic data, we use CASP. Our sites all have access to our CASP scores, so they are looking at them, and we'll be coming to you with those, I think at the first meeting or the second meeting, we're thinking in October is when they're going to be officially released. They're looking at the iReady diagnostic 3 that happened in May. They'll also look at iReady results that just have occurred, that the students have just taken, looking at the summative LPAC results that were taken in the spring. They also use LCAP survey results. They also look at attendance and behavior data, and then any other site data that may be relevant to the development of their plan. So our timeline, so currently site plan development has begun in a lot of cases, and first it begins in the spring. Principals start having conversations with school site councils and with advisory groups and with staff, doing working sessions, having meetings, talking about what's in the plan, talking about changes they want to make. The plan development will creep all the way up until the end of October when their initial draft plan comes to Ed Services. We look at it. Dr. Nguyen and I have time, we spend time looking at their plan. We provide some feedback to them. And then they turn in their final plan by October 15th. And then on October 20th, we'll be sharing the draft of all site plans with all of you for review. And you have the opportunity between October 20th and November 4th. You'll actually get the site plans on the 17th, but you have time then to schedule meetings, to meet with principals, to ask any questions you want to about the site plan. Somebody from my department, either myself or Dr. Nguyen, usually will be in those meetings. On November 7th, we make sure that we have all of the plans, any last minute changes that were made, the signed recommendations and assurances page, so that we can upload to the board agenda, and then we'll present them for approval on November 20th. Our principals are usually available if there's any questions, additional questions before the approval of the plans on the 20th. So we are having some work sessions to support our principals. We've done this now for 2 years. Dedicated time for site plan development with their colleagues and district staff. And our first with everything going on with Williams visits and back to school night, our first work session is tomorrow. But talking about looking at each session has a topic, looking at the different goals and what's happening in the action steps, just so they have an opportunity to get support. We can hear what's been happening at their meetings, what they've talked about with staff, problem solve. I think also trying to help make sure that the plans are, sometimes I think they can get everything in them, everything in the kitchen sink, and what we want them to be is really targeted with action steps that are doable. And so that's one of the things we work with the principals on. Let's talk about what's doable, what's going to get you, what's going to be the most effective things that you can focus on for this year. So next steps, we're going to follow our timeline. Our principals are already working with their staff and their advisory groups. We'll have meetings with you all towards the end of October into November, final approval on the 20th. And then we made the decision not to make any changes to our process this year. We wanted Superintendent Baird to have an opportunity to see the process, to see what we've been doing. And then we're going to spend some time as we go through the process talking about it and thinking about what adjustments we could possibly make as we move forward and what's needed to be changed. So at that point, I'm happy to take any questions to my.
Any questions from the board? Trustee Conley?
Superintendent Barry and I have had the chance to discuss this a little bit, and I don't want to overwhelm staff. But I do hope that as we look at the school site plans, is it possible to also look at our strategic plan and make sure that that's still where we want to go and has the appropriate goals that then guide our school site plan?
I think so. I think we try to align the site plans so that everything kind of lines up from strategic plan to LCAP and down. It's probably not a perfect match, but we do ensure that we have academic action steps, we have social emotional action steps, parent engagement action steps, which are all pieces of our site plan, or all pieces of our strategic plan.
I guess I'm hoping we can kind of trickle up a little bit instead of always trickling down. This is a good time to kind of reevaluate, is the strategic plan where we want it to be moving forward as we go through this process and evaluate the school site plans, if that makes sense.
Any additional questions? Trustee DeFazio?
Yeah, so I think within, thank you for responses to the questions ahead of time. But so when we think about goals, how do we separate, right? Like I think you meant like, you mentioned paring down like the goals to make sure that they're achievable and things like that. But how do we try to find a balance between like some aspirational that we like want to do at a site, but maybe won't hit, but is worth trying to achieve, versus ones that are like, we must absolutely do these things, and if we don't, then kind of drop it. Like that kind of trade-off, right? Of
We have not done that in the past. We've followed our pretty kind of consistent formula with how we've set our goals, looking at decreasing the percentage of students like in the who maybe are not meeting standard on the CASP and trying to improve that percentage that are, and looking at kind of this 10% model has been kind of what our model has been the last few years. And so I think to your point, it's a good conversation for us to have as we consider making changes to our site plan as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, we'll take questions from the public now, or comments from the public. Any member of the public wish to speak in this item? And is anyone online? Okay, I see no one online, and we have one person in the audience who would like to speak. Former trustee Nelson.
Thank you, current President Lambert. Yes, Wayback Machine. Okay, here's a positive. Kathy Barr, as Montalova principal, had, in my opinion, the absolute best parent involved, parent listened to, and parent integrated school site council of any of the many, all the school site councils that I visited during my term on the board. So I do recognize excellence in things like running a school site council. However, I want to know, when they're talked about training, did the superintendent or staff give the training in open public meeting, recording law and protocols? That was on our site as one of the things coming out of LA, I think, about what their large district, large lawyer thing set up, what the protocols are for running these school site councils as open public meetings. Because here's the problem. Will the current president, board president, rescind the last president mistaken May 21st, 2024 letter? You have a copy of it. It's marked up. There's arrows for where there is very clear legal mistake that was perpetuated by the past school board president that says it's illegal to record these open public meetings. And it implies that there'll be legal action of anybody who does that. I want to let you know that John Lewis is one of my heroes. I remember when he went to the steps of the South African embassy and sat on them and got arrested. I went to a Graham School Site Council last year. One of the audience members asked if they could record, and the person running the meeting didn't understand that, yes, you can record. In fact, the training that was on our school site said, you're supposed to train the people who are running this meeting to let people know that it's an open meeting, it can be recorded, it's perfectly legal, and just be aware that that can happen. So, Bill, Dr. Lambert, I hope you rescind that letter. It's a May 21st letter. It was sent out on the stationery under the school board president's name and signature. It seems to be an executive action, but you know how executive actions work. You can rescind the last president's executive action if you choose. If I need to get arrested, it'll be very interesting, because there's a whole anti-SLAPP set of laws.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Okay, we will move on to trustee comments. Any trustees like to make any comments? Trustee Conley.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the presentation tonight. I'm very much looking forward to the conversation process. And for the new trustees, what we've done in the past is Ms. Viliaba has prepared a calendar of opportunities to meet with the principals to discuss the school site plans. They were virtual or in person, depending on the needs. There was usually someone from the district office as well in the meeting. In the past, we could also Brown Act with another trustee. So for example, trustee Berman and I would make a spreadsheet of all of the school site plans. We would sit down and talk about them together, and then we would actually do the meetings together. We would pick some of our top ones and speak with those principals. So I encourage you to get highly involved with this process. It's only a 2-week window, but it gives you the chance to really go in depth and understand more about what's happening at the school site. I am also hoping, as we move forward and we evaluate how this process is working for us, and as we hopefully update our strategic plan as well, I'm also hoping we can get to a point, we had a robust conversation, I would say, this last spring about iReady and annual typical growth. And kind of following up on that conversation, I am very interested in every child in our district making at least 1 year's academic growth based on the academic standards in literacy and math each year, regardless of where they start the year. So if a third grader comes in at a 1.5 grade level, they will be at least at 2.5 by the end of the year. For our students who are behind grade level, I would hope that they would make 1.5 years worth of academic growth or more. iReady may not be the best tool for measuring that. If it's not, I hope we can find a better tool for doing so, because I think having that goal as a district means we don't lose sight of our students who are struggling, but we also don't lose sight of the kids in the middle, and we don't lose sight of our high achieving students. It keeps us focused on challenging everyone where they are and helping them grow. And for our students with IEPs, they have annual goals that we need to be ensuring they meet as well. So they might not match up to whatever testing mechanism we use, but they have their own individual education plan, which also sets their goals for the year. So I'm hoping we can move in that direction as a district. I know that's kind of a broader undertaking. In the meantime, I think annual typical growth is the metric that we have, so we'll use it. But I would like to kind of continue to explore that in the future.
Thank you. Any other comments? Trustee DeFazio?
I like the suggestion that Trustee Conley had around making sure that we're taking what we learned from developing these plans and try to propagate that back up towards our strategic plan. I think that's like a really, I think it's a lot of fresh faces here and a lot of folks that want to kind of take a look at where these plans are. So I think that would be really great. I took the opportunity within ahead of this to review some of last year's SIPSAs, and I think I found them actually like pretty engaging. Like I think they're pretty realistic about where challenges are, where kind of we want to go. I do want to encourage us to try to balance that tension of what are the achievable goals that we think we can do and making sure we hit those ones, and then also still having some aspirational things where we can push harder on that. I think that's a good balance to have. I think the bread and butter should be the ones that we really think we can nail, and then like, I always, when I'm setting goals myself, right, like the aspirational ones, I'm like, I'm okay with like 70% of them getting hit. And so that's not a hard number for my recommendation here, but I think that's a good way to balance. Like the ones that you think are really, really important and critical should be, if we don't hit these, we did something wrong in that sense. Whereas the broader ones give you some more flexibility in that, so.
Trustee Conley?
I'll just piggyback on that. I'm a fan of a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And so I think I'm not afraid of audacious goals. And I think when I've seen great instructional leadership, it has been around audacious goals, and you may or may not meet them, but it's that productive struggle to get there that really impacts our students long term, I think.
Yeah, I think the key part of that is being aware of which ones are the audacious goals and which ones are like the kind of core things that we want to do. And I think we're in agreement here.
Any further comments? Okay, well, thank you very much, Assistant Superintendent Bauer. I want to say Bear. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. It's an action item, the 2024-2025 unaudited actuals. Dr. Westover will present.
Good evening, trustees. This evening, I also have Nadia Pongo, who will be presenting alongside of me. So we have a presentation tonight, and this is varied from year to year, whether we have a full presentation or if it's something that's on consent or something shorter. So tonight's a little bit longer presentation to talk about kind of where we are with unaudited actuals. So this all connects back to our strategic plan. I'm not going to read through this since we're a little bit later in the evening tonight. So no later than September 15th of each year, the district's required to submit the unaudited actual financial report to the Santa Clara County Office of Education. What are they? Each year, we prepare the end of the year financial statements as of June 30th using a format known as the SACS. It is a report of all activities in all the district's funds, identifying unspent funds or reserves that are carried forward into the future years. And it will later be used by external auditors to prepare the official audit report. So the term unaudited actuals is because these have not been audited yet. So in June, we presented our estimated actuals where we showed you what the budget would look like for this upcoming year. But now that we've actually completed the year, we have our unaudited actuals, which are going to be compared to our estimated actuals. So why are our projections different than what we estimated prior to the actuals coming in? So in general, we use conservatively estimated revenue and expenditures during the budget and interim reporting periods. And this is simply because the risk of overstating is too great. So the safest path is to go conservatively. And I'll touch on this a little bit more because even though as conservative as we are continuing to get information that our AV growth is actually much lower than we've ever seen in the past. So revenue is received that was not anticipated. Expenditures allocations for contracted services and unfilled positions were reduced because of anticipated expenditures. Also, something to note that carryover amounts will be recognized at the first interim budget report.
Good evening, trustees. I'll be going over the unaudited actuals report, and we take this opportunity to compare what we presented to you as estimated actuals. At estimated actuals in June, we projected a 273,000 decrease in unrestricted programs and 3.8 million in restricted programs. After closing, the numbers came in an increase. For unrestricted programs, we have 1.6 million increase, and restricted programs, $820,000. We are talking about the fair market value GASB 31 in this presentation in more than one slide because this is a journal entry that we book every year, June 30th, to reflect the fair market value for GASB 31. And this is an item that we don't budget for.
So when you're looking at the differences between what we estimated and what came in as actual, there's $878,000 in there that really isn't money that's coming to us. It's not money going out the door, but it's something we have to show on our books, and the next day it gets reversed. So that's why you are seeing, part of why you're seeing a change in estimated versus actuals. A question could be, why is it that you don't bake this into your estimated actuals? Well, this number can either, based on what we're requested to do, can either be positive or it can be negative. So districts that struggle with meeting that 3% reserve level for the state level, our reserve level is higher, this GASB 31 can cause some significant issues for them. But this is just to make aware that almost $1 million is something that we show on our books and is reversed right away.
Great, thank you. And we're fortunate that this year we're projecting an increase on our fair market value. I know we had years when we did report a decrease, and our neighbors were also reporting a material decrease on their books. So on unaudited actuals and for the unrestricted programs, The variance is 1.9 million, and this is compared with estimated actuals versus unaudited actuals. For the restricted programs, we have a net variance of 4.5 million, and this is the restricted programs, which is federal funding, state funding, as well as some local restricted resources. These are the itemized or highlights of the variances, and for simplicity, we run it to the nearest 100,000s, but we wanted to, they're not perfectly zeros, but for simplicity, one of the assessed value is one of the items that we keep track, very close track on the value of the assessed value. It came in from 7% that we projected to 7.32%, and about 223,000. Interest, quarterly interest for the last quarter came in at $336,000 higher. Also, the ELOP final entitlement, there was a distribution, you may have heard about it during the spring. It was an increase of $520,000. That is very positive for our ELOP program, which will continue to provide the services to the level that we have seen in the past. $115,000 is miscellaneous revenues net increase and decrease. And again, $878,000 for the fair market value for the gas. In decreases, we see a 3.6 total decrease on expenditures, about 4.4 million in savings. Also, we had a 1.1 million decrease on contribution to special education, and that also impacts our revenue since it's under contribution, but it's mainly to expenditures decrease, and I will go over that in a little bit. The $558,000 seems like a decrease, but it's more about the timing when this expenditures hits our books. This is like if the project is still in process, we don't receive the invoices before June 30th. This is more kind of a delay expenditure that will hit our books this year. Salaries and benefits, we had $180,000, and to give you context, it's about 1.25 FTE. And then again, special education, we saw a reduction in contracted services expenditures, including non-public schools expenditure. We have the $248,000 kitchen equipment. That's also an item that will be hitting our books this year because the equipment didn't arrive before June 30th. Couple of items in that we wanted to include in the highlights. This one is a slide that I wanted to share with you about the carryovers, and this is all in our restricted programs. We still have a balance for our one-time fundings, and this the learning recovery. We have 2.7 million. We will continue to support early literacy. The arts and music, we still have 596. We will fully exhaust that this year. As well as Prop 28, we have 1.2 million carryover. The board approved the plan, and the schools are starting to spend these funds for Prop 28. ELOP is having a carryover. First interim will bring it back to the books, about 1.3 million. And GASB 31, we wanted to share this slide as well in case the public wants to learn more about it. This is the journal entry that we booked, the adjustment that doesn't really have an impact in your cash flow. So combined restricted and unrestricted, we closed the books with a net increase of 2.3 million with a fund balance of 58.5 million and reserve level of 39%.
So we then take the unaudited actuals to reset our multi-year projection. So this should look very familiar to the board. The only number here that has changed is what your starting fund balance is, but everything else remains the same, meaning the expenditures that we talked about at budget adoption, the revenue coming in is still the same. Something that we did want to talk through a little bit today is, as you notice, over the next 3 years, in year 3, we're ending with a 9.82% reserve level. As a board, we have a resolution that says we want to stay between 17 and 20%. So this shows us moving in the direction of being too low. And just this week, we got additional information from the assessor's office about our AV growth. So AV, or assessed value, is really what drives our revenues coming into the district because we are a basic aid district. So for this year, we had anticipated that our AV growth was going to be 3%. To give history, for the last 6 years, our AV growth on average has been 8.79%. The lowest it's been in those 6 years has been 6.7%. So we projected 3. When we ended the year on June 30th, we ended at 2.77. So close to 3, but not quite 3, which is still much lower than we've ever seen. As roll corrections come in, roll corrections are made, which then reset the starting value because the percent growth is the percent growth on the total roll. So as of today, we are showing 1.41% AV growth. So that 3% that we projected is not close enough. So it's coming in lower. So I think, again, looking in historical context, 3% was very conservative, knowing that past 6 years, we've had 8.79. So when we look forward into the future, this is going to impact because it is compounding, right? Because each year our roll compounds on the previous year. So when we come to you at first interim, we're going to be adjusting what we think our revenue that is coming in. And we'll also have adjustments, of course, from spending within the district for the first several months of the school year. But that's something to anticipate, that our AV growth is definitely showing a slowdown. Much of this, we've had a conversation with the county assessor's office. Much of this is being driven by commercial properties because they're not using the buildings. How they assess a commercial property is very different than how they assess a residential property. And we'll have more information when we talk about AV growth, what we're looking at in the future, and kind of what the drivers are.
So Rebecca and I have already discussed having a separate board item coming up talking about AV growth because it is so critical to our funding as a school district. And I would say that the very new news that we received about the reduction in AV on top of our already conservative 3% and the fact that we're at 1.41 now, and it still has the potential to drop lower than that between now and December or so is something we need to be paying close attention to.
So some updates and changes heading into first interim. So we know that we'll have new medical benefit rates effective January. We have our state block grant carryover amounts from restricted programs to be reflected at first interim, which Nadia talked through. Shoreline Education Protection Account, updated revenue projection, as well as AV projection rates update. So these are all things that will impact our first interim and why you will see changes. CalPERS rate and workers' comp rate update as well. So for our next steps, things that are that we continue to work on is our lease agreement with Google. So our lease agreement officially ends with Google this February. So it's not counted in our budget in the out years. Google still needs to turn the buildings over to us. So there is a question of if they cannot turn the buildings over to us because they have not brought them up to DSA standard, we feel that they should be paying the lease during that period if they cannot return the buildings to us. We'll continue to monitor the budget for updates from the state and the federal government and work to bring expenditures in line with revenue. Ideally, we would like our expenditures to match our revenue so we don't have a large deficit spend as we do now. At first interim, our first interim will be presented at the November 20th board meeting. Any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to start off with a question. What is the main driver of the increased expenses?
Not a very simple question, but main driver, depending on, let me pull up my slide. Main driver, over 80% of our costs come from personnel. So it's our personnel costs. We have a step, and we also have the raises that we give employees. So in each year, depending on where they are in the salary schedule, they could be receiving a 4% step plus a 5% raise. So that's the biggest driver, I would say.
Okay, great, thank you. Trustee Conley?
Thank you. So we're seeing a lot of write-downs of commercial properties then.
Yes.
It would be wonderful to learn more from the county assessor about some of our largest community partners who might be writing down their commercial properties and perhaps speaking with them about how that impacts our school district as well. I think one year Google wrote down a huge amount and we lost close to $2 million. And then I had another question. It would be really helpful, so the lease properties for Google are kind of an up in air item. And right now it sounds like because it's up in the air, you've kept it out of the budget projections for the future. I anticipate that regardless of what happens in some format, we will either use or receive revenue from those sites. It would be helpful to have a couple of examples of budget projections. So one with Google and one without, because I think for trustees are aware of that because we, go through conversations about what's happening with the lease sites and how that's going to play out over time. But it's also helpful for looking at the overall budget to have the comparison of, well, if Google stayed or if we leased it for a similar amount, this is how it impacts our budget. If it was to get completely exited, that's the budget that we have now. I don't feel like this is the realistic final number, but I also know other things are going to change as well.
Well, yeah, I imagine there's a lot of sensitivity analysis that will need to be done on our expenses. Trustee.
I just wanted to ask, one of the items that's on slide 15 with the grants with remaining balances is Prop 28, the 1.2 million, and which I assume is, I guess, 2 years worth of Prop 28. But also knowing that kind of how that's being spent at our school sites is on, the lunchtime programs and the things that I just wondering kind of what do we kind of do? How do we spend that 1.2 million going forward? Is that something that we stretched out over, like, obviously we wouldn't want to just have triple the money in 1 year and go back to the regular annual amount the next year, but we also have money sitting there. So I'm just,
Yeah, I mean, I can speak in general about the different one-time funds that we have. Director Chang is most in tune with Prop 28, but typically, especially during the COVID years when these one-time block grants come out, they come out and we're waiting for the rules. So we're waiting until we can spend it. So we end up having this carryover amount that does get spent over time. And there are deadlines to spend the carryover. You don't get to carry it over forever. So typically we'll spend it on things that, are used for that year. And you're right that the year that we don't have the carryover anymore, the program may feel different. But it's pretty typical for what happens with our one-time funding that comes through. Although, so.
More questions? Move on to public Superintendent Bear. Any members of the public wish to speak on this item? I do not see anyone in person, and I see one hand online. Okay, I'll close, further comments online. So take it, Ms. Liu. Please begin.
Thank you for taking my comment and thank you for the presentation. I was looking at the slideshow, and there was the one that kind of showed the amount of um, actual that was underestimated in June. And I noticed the $1.6 million of unrestricted fund. And I feel like I've been watching the trend in the past few years. There's always the actuals has I understand that it's good to be conservative and underestimate, your revenue. So if you do go over, you don't have to scramble and affect people. But I think there's also a downside of overly underestimating it, because then wouldn't that also mess up the planning for the next school year regarding whether or not, how to hire your staff, how to provide them enough support, for the students and everything else. I'm just trying to understand why that's a trend I've been seeing for the past few years now. And I'm just hoping that is there a way to better estimate this thing so we don't overly underestimate um, the actuals and then just making everything hard unnecessarily harder. That's it. That's just my comment. Thank you.
Allow Dr. Westover to comment on that.
Yes, I think our goal was to be as close as conservatively possible. One of the things that really impacts where our estimates come from is we take our cues from the school sites and the departments. So we meet with the departments prior to budget adoption and we say, where are you right now? What are you going to need to finish out the year? And we look at every single purchase order. So every contract that's open, every staff member that they have, and any positions they have open. So we say, with these open positions, do you anticipate filling them? Like, are we going to have a person that we're hiring? If they say, no, we're not going to hire someone for the rest of this year, we close that out. So it doesn't hold dollars anymore. So we go line by line with the departments and say, are you going to need this? So that's really what drives really our estimates. The department says, yes, I need that funding. So we hold it for them because we anticipate they'll be spending it. So this is something that we're going to work on district-wide about how do we get really close to what you think you're going to end the year at? Because we have great hopes. I think this is just sometimes maybe the nature of being in education. Our department heads and our directors, like, they want to make it happen, but sometimes because of that desire, I think they end up holding too much.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can just back on to that, I think in general, we have found, especially this year, that they find it a better path to hold on to that and overestimate their need rather than reduce it and come back before the board with a POCO or a request for an increase, right? Because I think there's to be honest, a hesitancy to do that because of how that will be viewed.
Okay, that closes public comment. Do I have any comments from the board? I don't. Have a comment. Superintendent Bear.
I had one that I just wanted to, and it's an important one, right? So we have just in the last couple of presentations, right? There's a confluence of factors that are building here, right? One is we've heard about student achievement, right? And we want it to be better than it is. We've talked about strategic plan, right? There's questions about strategic plan, goals. And now we have this conversation about budget, right? Where we are, even if we did have Google revenue, we are still, our spending is still outpacing with Google revenue, rental revenue, just call it rental revenue. We're still off by some odd $6 million. With rental revenue, we're imbalanced by 8-point-something million, right? Also, AV growth, I would anticipate, is going to be below 1.41 when it finally finishes. The district in general has relied on great AV growth to bridge that gap in past years, and it has worked, right? And as I've said before, we're in a position now where we have a 39% reserve. We don't have to make rash decisions here, but we do need to take a hard look at all of these factors, right? All of these pieces. And one of the things that I look at coming in is we have many programs and initiatives in place, and we're working hard to find that student achievement, right? To really execute on that. The intent is there. But what we're doing isn't meeting the needs of every child in the school district, right? So we need to look at that. So I think in looking at all three of these together, right, we are going to need to look at what's effective, right? What are we doing that's effective? And how do we do more of that? What are we doing that's less effective? How do we do less of that? How does that affect the budget? And then how does that inform our update to the strategic plan, right? All those three things, and they're three big things, right? But those three things are going to need to work together in this fall and into the winter as we look at that. And I just wanted to point out perhaps the obvious that all three of those items are really important to the school district right now. And we have been talking a great deal internally about this. And we're going to have to, have those conversations and do that analysis and understand what's going to be best for the students of the school district moving forward, and how are we going to make sure that we can afford to keep doing those things as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Just like to report that Trustee Reed has joined us from back to school night. Okay, well, thank you very much. Finished comments. This is an action item, and we're being requested to approve the 2024-2025 unaudited actuals. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a comment in light of Superintendent Bear's comments, if that's all right, before we make an action.
Proceed.
I'm happy to make a motion to accept the unaudited actuals as presented. And then I also wanted to say, I think it's very customary when a superintendent enters a district for the first time. A best practice is for that superintendent to, in some format, analyze existing programs, analyze strategic plan, analyze budget, and work on a plan moving forward. I highly encourage you to do that. I highly encourage you, if you need to bring in someone, I know we are very wary of external contracts, and we want to be very careful, but that's usually when we look kind of broadly across the state or other school districts, even nationwide, there is usually an effort to work with a third party to help do that analysis, because it can be challenging to do from the inside. So if that's something that you feel you need, I encourage you to do that. If you don't feel you need it, great, we'll save that money too. But I think that this is an important part of your role, and I thank you for being open about it, and I hope the public understands it as well, because it's the best way to make sure we're on a firm academic and budgetary footing for our students.
Trustee DeFazio?
Yeah, not too much to add, I think, to your comments, but I'm looking forward to the AV growth presentation item forthcoming. I think that'll be really enlightening for a lot of us. But I think, yeah, generally kind of similar to what Trustee Conley's saying, this is a great time for us to reorient, like pare down, redeploy, like invest in the things that are working, and kind of take a look at broadly, right? Because we have had significant growth over the past decade, and now it's a time to say, like, okay, what's working, what's not, what should we actually like be investing these funds in that we think is getting the bang for our buck. So I'm excited to tackling that with all of you.
Any additional comments? And we have a motion from Trustee Conley. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion from Trustee Conley and a second from Trustee DeFazio that the Board of Trustees approve the 2024-2025 unaudited actuals. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to the next item, It's an action item also, approval of application for exemption from the required expenditures for classroom teacher salaries. Dr. Westover will present.
So this evening, we'll talk about a little bit about what the current expensive education actuals is. It's a calculation that is a requirement of Ed Code, and it's used to determine the percentage of expenditures for direct classroom cost of teaching students. And I'll talk a little bit about what the formula looks like because it'll help inform kind of why we didn't meet the percent this year. So the numerator is certificated salaries, removing community services, food services, fringe benefits for retired persons, and construction. So this is really at looking at the classroom, mainly the classroom teacher. And then the denominator is our total spending, and they give us some allowances for things that we take out of the denominator, including transportation, lottery, SPED students in non-public schools, so private schools, and other federal or state categorical aid, not including any teacher salaries. That sounds like a lot. I'll break it down a little bit. So when it says, and other federal or state category aid, not including any teacher salaries. So this means when we get big chunks of money from the federal government or from the state, for example, ELOP would be one of these. If we pay even $1 of a teacher's salary out of that multi-million dollars, we must now include that in the denominator. So the percentage is made up of the numerator divided by with the denominator. So if you wanted to adjust the percentage at all, you have to adjust the numerator or the denominator or both of them together. So this should look familiar because we just discussed this last time, and I thought this would be good for us to take a look at again. And so this is something that is not included in the numerator. So this is talking about our contracts. So the blue is budget without contracts and the orange is our contracts. So when we look closer at those contracts, what do those contracts include? Direct instruction is the light orange. So instruction supervision, miscellaneous pupil services, instructional assistance, which would ordinarily be part of that numerator value. But because it's contracted out, it's considered a contractor. So it increases our denominator, but doesn't help us with the numerator anymore. Then 11% is miscellaneous services, and then 4% is the routine maintenance and operations. So we do have a chunk of our budget, if we look back, 13%, that is missing from that numerator and is really in some ways counting against us because it is in the denominator. And this is looking at the percent of our budget that's spent on legal, crossing guards, advertising. So all the other miscellaneous contracting expenses, it's about 1% for our contracts. So the required percentages in elementary is set at 60%. So it's important also to know that these percentages have been in place for a very long time. Unified districts is 55% and high school districts is 50%. So why do we have these different percentage levels for different types of schools? High schools typically have more staff, such as counselors, at-risk, school engagement facilitators, which is why the percentage is lower. Because when you look at a typical high school, there's a lot of support staff needed in order to run that high school. But our elementary and middle schools are starting to be staffed similar to that of a high school where we have lots of support personnel because we're providing a lot of services that are not necessarily right in the classroom. We have counselors, we have all sorts of different supports. We have McKinney-Vento supports. That wasn't typical when these percentages were put in place. When we look across the state, so this chart is showing the blue is elementary, which districts across the state, what is the percentage of districts not meeting this percentage? So almost 60% of all elementary districts in the state are not meeting this percentage for the 23-24 year. And then we see high school and unified districts as well. So we see that across the state, many districts are in a similar position to us. So trends in meeting the CEA requirement, there continues to be an upward trend of districts not meeting the CEA. So last year when we presented this, I had the same graph, but it was missing one further year. So when we look, it has continued to increase year by year. There are multiple factors, including the need for more counselors at risk and other positions that are categorized as outside the classroom. So when this percentage is run, because we use SACS coding, they tell us specifically, you may only count these personnel, and the personnel have specific numbers assigned to them. Many districts, including us, contract out for programs such as ELOP. So we contract out with YMCA, which impacts our final numbers, again, because it grows that denominator. In the 23-24 year, almost 60% of elementary districts did not meet the CEA. So currently, our CEA is at 53.74%. To apply for an exemption, we're providing the county with our current salary schedule and benefits. The comparable districts provided are based on the KC report from school services and are provided as supporting documentation. The county actually has full access to all salary schedules and benefits across the county. So this is just showing we do have a very competitive salary schedule for our teachers. So we wanted to do a quick look at what is our current CEA. So in the light orange on the left, what is the required in the center? And then if we include everything that we consider kind of direct support with students. So even though they don't fall into those codes, for example, counselors, if we put counselors and all those individuals that support students directly, where our CEA would land if we expand what is included. That puts us a little above 65%. So some additional information, 73% of our budget is spent on salaries. This is excluding district leadership. This includes counselors, psychologists, nurses, and principals. This percent puts the district well over the required percentage if direct support personnel were included. It does not include contracts for ELOP or other special ed services. So what happens when you file an extension? You file an extension with the County Office of Education, and we demonstrate you either can demonstrate serious financial hardship, that's not where we are currently, or that the salaries and benefits are in excess of those paid by other comparable school districts, which we are in that category. Then they make a determination if we are going to accept our exemption, the funds are released, and we spend the amount of the funds are released, and then we continue on. If it is found that we did not qualify for this exemption, they can hold those funds and say these must be paid on teacher salaries in the following year. And then we wanted to open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Have any questions from the board? Trustee DeFazio.
Question or discussion, but I'll start with question. Right, I think the thing that's like important to me that I kind of struggle with this when trying to measure, right? Like this is just a core metric that the state is applying to make sure that the conditions are satisfactory. Do we think that we are, and this might be board direction coming up, so do we want to get more teachers and be able to do that and spend that money on this? Or is this something where we're like, we're at good capacity, we have the supports that we need for everyone? Like, where are we kind of landing on this, right? Because I think that's at the end of the day, that's what we want to do here, right? So I don't know. That's a hard question, I imagine.
Can you just, this is what we want to do here. What is what we want to do here?
In our schools, right? Are we having the appropriate kind of balance of teachers, supports, and all of these things for the goals that we have and the kind of the education we want to provide, right? And I think it's a hard question, so I don't expect like a yes, no answer or like precise thing, but I think that's what's rattling through my head when I review this.
Or is it a rhetorical question? Trustee Conley.
Well, I think, and I think maybe we're branching a little bit into discussion instead of questions, but I think we're going to get an enrollment update, the 8-week count in October. And that's also a good time to pair enrollment and also looking at, we'll get to see class sizes and what staffing is at the school sites. I almost wish that presentation could be paired with this moment because those conversations go hand in hand. And that's when we can really see, do we have the staffing that we need at each school site? What do our class sizes look like? Are we meeting students' needs with support personnel?
So before I keep going with comments, I'm going to take public comments. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this? We see no one in person and one person online. I'm going to close off any further hands raising. Ms. Liu, would you like to speak?
Hi, thank you so much for taking my comment. I do notice an increased trend in this exemption amount. I think in 2023 it was about 3.6 million. Last year was like around 5. This year is 7 million. It's concerning to me. And I noticed like, why do we have our like, so our PE teachers, we use rhythm and moves instead of having higher PE teachers. Same thing with music. We have CSMA instead of having like music teachers, early literacy coaches. We only have 6 to divide it between 11 school, where they have now to travel to multiple sites. Our teachers already have to travel far to get to school site and then to get to school, travel to get home. So you would hope like, when they're at school, they get to be on site, get to know the student, get to know the community. Meanwhile, currently, now they have to travel in band and group to multiple sites. So it's like a lot of driving. It's exhausting to our teachers. These are the teachers who are supposed to help the student who's struggling the most. So is there a way where we can increase the amount of literacy coach? Because they will be the teachers that are facing the students. Same thing with PE music teacher. Two of my kids are currently in another school district, and they have music and PE teachers as staff and not as consultant. And it's so, so nice to be able to see that in action. And so I'm just hoping that, as Mr. Bear is looking at the strategic plan, as looking at how to support our student, as looking at like, the how to measure true success and giving them the student the support they need is something, these 3 things he would consider. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Liu. Okay, we can continue with trustee comments. So I was somewhat landing on where trustee DeFazio is I spent way too much time thinking about this metric, probably more than was healthy. But looking at it, I don't know whether 60% is the right number, whether 70% is the right number, 50% is the right number. I don't know whether this is a metric about how much money is spent on classroom teachers, basically. Other metrics could be the number of teachers. Other metrics could be experience of teachers. But I do find these kind of metrics, I think, really interesting. And if they're put in a context of everything else that's going on in the school district and also informed by student progress and student achievement, they can be really, really valuable. Now, this is something that is a mandated your reporting metric. And I'm sure our staff has a lot of information and metrics like this that they understand really not only on a school-wide basis, but even more importantly on a site basis, because we know that every school is very different and it has very, very different staffing needs. And so what I would, for me as a trustee, which would be really valuable, is to have information like this within the context of all the programs the school does, informed by what student achievement measurements. And that will help us or help me as a board member be better able to align sort of the policies and the finances of the school district with the strategic plan, which is really what I see my goal is. And I would like to see this data, not because we had to mandate it, report it, is because, hey, this is information that you guys think about all the time and share with us so that we can get the benefit as well. Trustee Conlon?
Oh, Trustee Henry hasn't spoken yet.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. I think one of the things I noticed in just pulling up last year's similar certificate versus this year, is it looked like the raw number of the numerator actually went up this year, and but the denominator went up more. So I know, some people have called attention to how much the difference has grown, how much the exemption has grown, but that stood out to me of the actual amount we were spending in that numerator, which makes these questions even more interesting of what's in that denominator and the things that you've put in. I found it really helpful to see what it looks like to see this combo number of direct support that's coming from some of these contracted services, which to me makes me kind of comfortable with where we are, but also very interested in like even those like specific questions as we continue to look at how the strategic plan and the goals and how this relates to the budget. And I think one of that question of, for some of those things that are direct services but are outside our numerator, I think we talked about even when we approved that kind of list of pre-approved vendors, things like CSMA, that we talked then about how it would be worth regularly kind of thinking like, does it continue to make sense to contract this particular service out? Does this, so some of the questions that are raised about things like PE and music that could almost, depending on the school district, be in either category, either side of the fraction. I think those will be important questions that I'm interested in examining, in addition to just, what else is in that denominator, and how it relates to what we want to do for our students, and whether all of the things that are in there are things that are valuable to continue or not, that are a lot more complicated than just, we need to file this exemption. So I'm comfortable filing this exemption, but I'm also just really interested in kind of what we look at over the next 6 months to see where we are next year with this.
Trustee Reed?
I think the previous conversation ties into this one, and I'm also interested in a future conversation about things like enrollment and class size. They all kind of go together. I think as we now have a new team, we have a new superintendent examining programs to see what's functioning, what can be changed. Does it make sense to hire a full-time PE teacher at a site? Will the scheduling be easier for classes to get out there versus contracting? Those are things that we need data on. And if we get the data that supports that, like, yes, actually, it's going to make things easier for all the different grade levels to get out there in PE if we have somebody on staff, great. But if the data supports the opposite of actually the hours of the contractual workers, they're working better with the schedule that our teachers need, then that's something we're going to continue to support. The graphic that contained all the direct support, because those are things that even though counselors are certificated staff, them not being included in the numerator is an important piece of they are directly dealing with students. Support staff that are on campuses supporting students aren't part of that numerator, and I think that's an important piece to highlight. So having that graphic that shows that if we included everybody that had that direct contact, then we would be above it. But all these other stipulations that we don't necessarily think of when we're seeing that number and seeing that exemption filing don't come to mind. Something else that I was looking at was if you look at the high school and they have that 50% number, and if you look at our middle schools are staffed more like they are high schools. And so it makes sense that we're a little bit shy because we do have a lot of extra support staff on those middle school campuses for things that we're prioritizing, like mental health and socio-emotional learning. So it's interesting to just break things down and really pull it apart and not view it as like, oh, we're not reaching this specific metric. It's why are we not, and what actually is the effect on students and student learning and classroom sizes and the overall of how do how do we create a goal for this that actually makes sense for students and for our budget?
Trustee Conley?
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation tonight because I think it's the most detailed presentation we've ever had around this particular exemption, even though it's something that we go through each year. And so I think that's led to fruitful discussion as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is those direct services that are outside the kind of teacher in the classroom moment, it's, CSMA and Rhythm and Moves for PE spring to mind because they're programs that every family in this district is aware of. It's something that every child experiences. But I believe the bulk of that funding actually goes to special education contracting. Is that correct?
Sorry, I'm not understanding the question. Can you say it
Are
one?
you talking about the
The,
contract?
the contract section that
Ah.
is not does not fall under CEA, but we consider direct student services. The majority of that is special education spending, isn't it?
A mix, yes, majority is special education, but it also includes Rhythm and Moves,
Yeah,
CSMA,
it-
classroom.
It has those other programs, but I would be curious to see. So in the election season last year, we had a very interesting, I'm sure you guys are going to have flashbacks up here. The Cuesta Park Neighborhood Association Candidate Forum, one of the organizers had done a public records request for all of the contracts within the district and broke them out. And it really did come down to the bulk of it is special education spending. And so we could knock off Rhythm and Moves and we could move CSMA in-house and we could do all of these things and actually not change that metric substantially, possibly. So as we have further discussion, it would be good this was the most detailed presentation yet. Maybe there's a written report that might not be part of the slides that lays out more of a breakdown of those direct services and what they are, because I worry about naming programs that people are familiar with, because there are many families that never access special education services, and not actually having a full understanding for our public of how that money is being spent, the bulk of it.
We have that hand.
Superintendent Bear?
Oh, they're very easy for us to provide. It's what created the graph.
A couple of comments based on what you've said. We are planning, based on what we heard last spring, doing some analysis around bringing in-house certain programs, what the puts and takes are by bringing those in-house. Also, technology was an item that was at question, so there'll be some work done this year as well, doing some analysis around that. And yes, the CEA number is an interesting number, right? It's a number. I think we do provide a great deal of direct service to kids on school campuses. More interesting than that number to me, though, is what Trustee Reed was touching on. Is I'd really like to better understand effectiveness of any and all of those programs, because you can hit that number and have a really poor program as well. So I think that's what we need to be focused on as a school district.
Any further comments? And this is an action item. Do I have a motion from the board?
I make a motion to approve the application for exemption from the required expenditures for classroom teacher salaries as presented.
I'll second.
A motion by Trustee Conley and a second by Trustee Henry to approve the application for exemption from required expenditures for classroom teacher salaries as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. We will move on to the next item. Discussion item, board bylaws and board policies and updates. I am presuming Trustee DeFazio and Trustee Henry will present.
All right. Let's see. Add some slides. So I'm going to talk about our latest batch of board policy updates from the policy committee. Just as a reminder, so these are These emerged from the August 20th meeting. We make recommendations, but ultimately it's the decision of this. We'll have 2 readings. This is the first reading for discussion. In general, we take the CSB updates to sample policies and any requests, previous things that come from previous meetings, and kind of update the policies. There we go. In this instance, all of them came from the June 2025 update, except for independent study, which I think was initially in December 2024. We had some work to do on it to hammer that out, but now we're ready to bring it forward. Let's see. So here's the list. I think folks have read through it. Go to the next slide. So the first one up is non-discrimination in district programs and activities. All of these are updates to policies. So I'll go through a little bit of what kind of the existing policy is about. I won't go too deep, and then kind of what's in this update. So at a high level, our existing policies that programs and activities must be free from unlawful discrimination based on actual or perceived characteristics. District facilities, programs, and websites must comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. What's new in this update, and this is going to be common across, this is, I think, one of the big important things, I think, to highlight here, which is going to be a recurring theme in future updates as well. The Tennessee versus Cardona ruling basically vacated updates to Title IX regulations, and so now we're back in the kind of 2020 regulations for Title IX. So there's a lot of cleanup to do. In this case, there's actually not too much that actually nothing gets modified here. We last updated it February 2024, so nothing specifically to roll back, but this is kind of setting the stage. This is what was in the CSBA update for things that are up to date. The other updates are just around state law, which clarifies prohibited discrimination includes combinations of characteristics, and then expands upon a prohibition against derogatory athletic team names. Next slide. Charter school authorization. I won't go through the details of what the process is for authorization, but basically we outline the process and timelines for approval and denial and hearings. The updates, there's an ed code prohibition on approving new charter schools offering non-classroom based instructions until January 1st, 2026. And then it outlines the process for material revisions to charter, which was previously in a charter school oversight policy, but now is moved here where there's more appropriate with authorization. Next slide. Lactation accommodation. So both federal and state law require that employees be provided reasonable break time and appropriate location to accommodate the desire to express breast milk for their infant children. Not only is it required by law, it's an important part of doing right by our employees in the district. Policy prohibits discrimination, harassment, and retaliation, and outlines the process for making accommodation requests. The updates clarify that lactation accommodations apply to expressing breast milk. They are required at least 1 year after the birth of the child. And then, as mentioned before, there are implications from the Title IX change. Accommodations are still required by state and other federal law, but not specifically Title IX. Next slide. This one was last updated in 2008, so it's pretty old. At its core, the policies that maintain confidentiality of directory information and will only release it in compliance with law, your policies and regulations. Our updates include only adding directory information in meeting minutes according to our board bylaws, and prohibits disclosure to private profit-making entities. Next slide. Independent study. A lot of us are familiar with independent study, but it allows for as an optional short-term instructional alternative, which comes with a written agreement. Given the option to support short-term and long-term independent study, staff recommended short-term only, and the committee agreed. The update contains some explicit language around receiving content aligned to grade level standards, and a few updates due to new state laws around school closures, accounting for attendance and documentation requirements for hours of work and asynchronous instruction. Next slide. Finally, the disclosure of privileged information. The existing policy maintains confidentiality of information that we kind of acquire as part of our official duties as board members. This is a board bylaw. The updates here, definition of confidential information is expanded and clarified to include information discussed in closed session, information acquired surrounding closed session, so in anticipation or follow-up that's specifically related to that closed session, communications with the district's attorney, and information deemed confidential by the board. It exempts already publicly disclosed information, provided that the disclosure itself was legitimate, and then outlines some actions that the board may pursue in cases of disclosure. All right, I gave a whirlwind tour of what we covered. Any questions? Just we'll end the presentation there and we can move.
Any questions? Don't see any. Any members of the public wish to speak in this item? Seeing no members of the public in person, I see one person online. Okay, I'll close further comments online. Ms. Liu, would you like to speak?
Hi, thank you for going over this. I have a question regarding the lactation thing. I noticed at our school that lactation pod is put in a room like with no window, like just a room. And then so I'm just like imagining myself as a mom having to, nurse the kid pump, like go into a room that's have no window, and then inside that room, it just feel like extra claustrophobic. I was just wondering, as far as regulation go, is it possible to make it so like if it can be a pot that's put outside, so free up some space, but also make, the mom feel less like, trapped. That I'm just sharing my observation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Liu. Okay, any comments from the board? Trustee Conlon?
I'd like to thank the policy committee for all of their work on this. It's been great to keep moving through these. I'm still a little thrown off by, I do think it should be the superintendent who's presenting the policy changes to the board. We don't have any other committees where the committee members actually make presentations to the board, like the housing committee, for example. Staff would present on what the housing committee did. That's not a knock against Trustee DeFazio. You're an excellent presenter. It's just not been the practice to have trustees present on committee work, even if it's a trustee committee, which is, it kind of neutralizes things to have a staff member presenting it. And well, I have thoughts on lactation pods, but I think I might save those.
I'm open to other committees presenting.
Yeah, I'll just comment on it. I don't know the dynamics of that, but I do think the level of detail that Trustee Henry and Trustee DeFazio go into this, I think, is very, very valuable. And it just seems like an extra burden of work to put on Superintendent Bear to have to, then pass that knowledge on to you, and then you say it. So
I am fine with whatever direction the board wants to go. I
believe you're part of the committee meetings, aren't you?
am.
Yeah, so you know the detail as well.
I could, yes. So I will take my direction from the board.
you're not asking us to decide this right now, right? So, okay. Any further comments? Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation, and we look. So
Just
I'll
one
give you.
comment, yes.
You can close it. We look forward to hearing it in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Just reviewing this, I did really, one thing that when reviewing these for Title IX specifically and across the other ones, I think it made me quite appreciative to be in California, where we've kind of broad protections for folks, and even in spite of how things are going at the federal government. But Title IX, yeah, thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 10, board updates. Do we have any? Sorry.
Sorry, no, I just
We're
thought,
moving back, Trustee Henry.
not a substantive comment, just a process one, that I think we've scheduled our next meeting for the 20th. It's the same, it's the day before the next board meeting. And so there are finishing up updates from the June packet, and there will, we assume, soon be a September packet. So these will keep rolling in.
Okay, thank you.
September 17.
Okay, item 10, board updates. Any updates from the board? Trustee Conley?
Trustee Henry, Superintendent Bear, and I attended the challenge team this morning. And Superintendent Bear presented on our district, and also workforce housing was a well-discussed topic in the event. So I wanted to thank Superintendent Bear for representing our district at that event. And I will be going at the end of this month to the California School Boards Association Board of Directors meeting. So if you have any hot pressing items that you'd like me to bring up when I'm there, please let me know.
Other updates? Okay, item 11, items for future agendas. Are there any items for future agendas? Don't see any. Move on to item 12, future board meeting dates. Well, we have government's calendars here. Future board meeting dates are on September 18th, October 2nd, and October 16th. And if there's nothing else, we will adjourn the meeting at